We were lurking. This is it. This is Emil Amok's Takeout, my takes on all things considerable, the secret podcast, secret live podcast. Man, a lot happened within the last couple hours. We were disappointed that Fani Willis did not get take the stand a second day. The first day was enough, right? I mean, the day was for her dad. What a cantankerous, lovable, kind guy he was. I mean, you can see why she's the way she is, right? Actually, I have to say that I'm surprised that the majority of the analysts were saying that, oh, she won. There's nothing to disqualify her from the case, which may be the case, which may be, I know the law, right? That you got to disqualify her based on the law. But I think there's this other thing that the Trump folks are trying to do, and that's just to discredit her in general, which I think they did in some ways, right? So it's kind of a mixed thing. I don't think she's disqualified from presenting the case, but I do think that whatever she said yesterday, even though I support her generally, I think is going to be used to hurt her. Anyway, I've got Professor Daniel Phil Gonzalez coming up. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about that. Also, the other big news that Donald Trump he's got to come up with $350 million. Oh, he's got it. He's got it. Come on. Come on. He's the great white hope. He's got the money, right? And if he doesn't have the money, he'll get it from all his supporters, I guess. But he's really taken a hit on that business fraud case. And he's pretty much can't run his business for the next 3 years. So we'll talk about that. Talking about Navalny, his death, what that means on the international scene. Donald Trump, or rather Joe Biden, has said, we know who did it. We know who's behind it. Putting the blame on Putin. And, Putin's biggest supporter in the U.S. is Donald Trump. So Donald Trump got a kind of double hit today. I did a piece in our ALDEF blog, the Asian American Legal Defense and Education Fund, aldef.org/blog, on Shane Gillis. He's going to host not this Saturday, but a week from now. But I want to put out some things, some of my thoughts about Shane Gillis and whether or not he's done his penance. I mean, 5 years since he did all these jokes about Asians and he said some bad things about people who live in Chinatown, racist things. 5 years, enough time? I mean, you can go to the ALDEF blog, aaldef.org/blog, and see it. It's up there now. We'll get to that with Professor Dan in a sec. And then there's a story in the front page of the New York Times that is right up Professor Dan's wheelhouse about ethnic studies. And I'm going to talk to him about that. So a lot to talk about today. Welcome to the program. We're here Monday through Friday, 2 p.m. Pacific, sometimes recorded, sometimes live. But it's Emil Amok's Takeout, my takes on all things considerable. We talk about, what WDAAAT, what does an Asian American think? Because they never bother to ask us. Before we get into the show, I want to talk about a couple things that are coming up. I'm doing a thing at the Improv, the Hollywood Improv on Melrose on Sunday at 4 p.m. If you're not doing anything and you just happen to be on Melrose Avenue in Hollywood, I'm part of a show with other comics. I'll do my 5 minutes. I think I got one good Trump joke, just one. But it's like this show doesn't necessarily have punchlines. Or this show here, this one I'm doing now, I just talk. It's a news talk monologue. As, in the old news talk days, right? News talk radio days. But the show I'm going to do on Sunday, a little 5-minute bit, it does have punchlines, so come on by. get your tickets at the website of the Hollywood Improv. You can get them in advance. It's going to rain, so if you're coming from far away, you might be able to float in. Although I think, like a 60% chance. That doesn't mean it's going to rain. But it's going to be a wet President's Day weekend. And so if you're not doing anything and you're in the area in LA, in Southern California, come see me. I'm at the Hollywood Improv, 4 p.m. on Sunday. Okay, also coming up, I'm going to be at the Fresno Fringe Festival doing my show, Emil, Amok, Lost NPR host. And that's going to be March 2nd and 3rd, right? Go to the roguefestival.org for info there. And they're going to post things on their website soon. The New York Fringe. I'm going to be at the New York Fringe in April. So that's coming up. And then in May, I'll be in Orlando. So a lot of Emil, Amok to go around. And now, our program. I was kind of shocked by this a little bit. Well, no, I wasn't. It's not fair to say I was shocked. But Donald Trump, judge, ordered former President Trump to pay at least $350 million and barred him from running a company in New York. So, can't run his company. He's barred for 3 years. Now, it could have been longer. He kind of caught a break there. And this is in the civil fraud trial that centered on accusations that Trump misrepresented his wealth. And so if he really is wealthy, well then, 350 shouldn't be any problem at all. $364 million penalty, to be precise, in that New York civil trial. Judge Arthur Engoron, New York judge, ordered Trump to pay that amount, his companies and fellow defendants. The ruling deals a massive blow to the GOP frontrunner. Remember, he was recently ordered to pay $8.3 million in another trial. And so we're talking about these things adding up here. Oh, excuse me, $83.3 million. Oh, near $90 million in the defamation case. The E. Jean Carroll defamation case. So Trump was also barred from running a business as an officer or director for 3 years. So they're breaking down all the penalties here in the news reports here. Trump and his various organizations, $354,868, and that's $768. $354,868,768. Oh my God, that's a lot of money when you see it spelled out like that. Eric Trump, $4 million. Donald Trump Jr., $4,013,024. So it's the same amount for Eric and Donald Trump Jr. They do not play favorites. Alan Weisselberg has to pay $1 million. So, court-appointed independent monitor will be overseeing the Trump organization's financial activity for at least 3 years. Oh my God, it's going to be in a straitjacket, which is good. Good for all the people who got stiffed by Trump. Trump attorney Alina Habba said on X, "We trust that the appellate division will overturn this egregious verdict and end this relentless persecution against my clients." So the big picture is New York Attorney General Letitia James sought a $370 million penalty from Trump from allegedly committing decades of financial fraud. So this is, Engoron gave him a kind of break here. Let's bring on Daniel Phil Gonzalez, College of Ethnic Studies, Asian American Studies, San Francisco State University professor emeritus. Hi, Dan.
Hello. Good afternoon. Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
It's good to see you.
So this was the big news. I mean, Donald Trump gets hit with this, well, 350, at least 350, but it adds up to like 364 million in penalties.
Yep.
As
Yep.
I mean, Donald Trump just can't let this. I mean, he can, oh, we're going to get it back in the appellate court. I mean, this is a real.
Yeah, and his usual plea for money from his minions
Yeah,
is not going to yield that that level of financing.
yeah,
So he's gonna be hurt,
yeah.
and he really doesn't own that much in Manhattan. Uh, he owns a little bit more if you go statewide in New York,
Mm,
but a lot of the stuff it has his name
mm,
on it in Manhattan is just branding,
yeah,
and he paid leases for that, and so he stopped paying on a lot of those leases, and so the signs came down, his name came down. Um, yeah, I think 5 years is lightweight.
a three. They're
Um,
going three.
yeah, well, five. I'm accumulating both his and his sons, but they
Oh
they
yeah,
run at the same time. So 3 years for him, 2 years for his sons.
right.
Um, my concern is that he could move some of his activity across the line into New Jersey, which is a pretty loose state when it comes to watching corporations. Right
Yeah,
there are two places that in the greater history of corporate America were seen as early corporation shelters. Right, one was Delaware and the other one was New Jersey. So that's those both are right next door,
yeah,
and he could just move some of his activity over there. However, he's going to be monitored
right,
by two different monitors. That's my understanding. I did a very brief reading through this because it just came down a couple hours ago.
right.
But
Well, is
uh,
this enough to
you
sink
know,
his campaign, or are people going to have this perception that, oh, Trump's got all this baggage, he's, you know, I'm going to vote for someone else. I mean, this is not a conviction so much as, this is a civil fraud trial, but it
now
is
the
a
people that are
setback.
willing to donate to him, the people that are even at this point willing to donate to him, and the people who attend his rallies,
Mm,
the people who defend him, when they encounter a bit of criticism or even mild discussion
mm,
about the issues and the facts presented in these instances, they're not going to change. They're going to be there. They've always been there. That kind of person, and if we aggregate them into a movement of sorts, right? They've always been around, and they've always been willing to invest, even in people who have been proven not only by the courts, but people among their own associates, right, as having built guilty of moral, ethical, and legal criminal actions.
mm.
They still stand there and support them. So that's never going to change. There's going to be up to 20%, I would say, that are hardcore Trumpers that are never going to change.
Yeah,
I expect to see violence come from among those ranks.
really.
Uh,
Over
yes,
something like this,
absolutely.
or for other
No,
things
no.
like,
Over the fact that no, it won't. They won't react immediately to this,
mm,
but they will react against this judge. I mean, his life is in danger at this point,
yeah,
and I mean that very directly.
right.
Uh, and their attitude towards the judicial system in general also. I have no doubt that many of the people who are hardcore Trumpers have had mild, at least mild,
Mm,
encounters with police, and perhaps have even been charged, if not convicted, of various misdemeanors.
yeah,
There's going to be a large number of people, uh, especially among the male population, who have been guilty of or been charged with assaults. I think there's a high incidence of domestic violence in that population.
mhm,
And again, I've always said this over the years, ever since guns started becoming a major issue because of the repeated occurrence of mass shootings,
yeah,
that there's also a high level of gun ownership in that population. So you can break that down geographically. You can look at it on a state by state basis. You can look at it on a concentration in urban centers basis, right? You can look at it racially,
Mhm.
and by gender, and you're going to see a clear pattern.
Yeah.
You're going to see a very clear pattern that is going to continue to exist in American society. There are people who have those kinds of attitudes. They believe in the exclusivity of white rule, white supremacy in American society, even though they don't say that all the time. But when pressed, their language always refers back to racial and ethnic references,
Yeah.
particularly on the issue of immigration.
Right. And so as Donald Trump is taken to justice, some people will take it personally and say, "Oh, they're coming after me." This is Trump logic.
That's what he
Yeah.
says. That's what
And
he says, and that's what they believe. He knows how to read their personalities. He understands how they think, and he's been very successful in becoming established in their. I called him a couple of sessions ago with you.
mm,
That's he's their avatar,
yeah.
and and actually, I think it was the day before, the day after we had that session. The Trump campaign started putting out that ad
Mm.
in Midwestern jurisdictions, that God created Trump
Oh yeah.
ad.
Yeah.
I mean, talk about parallel Messiah kind of language
Yeah.
and imagery.
It's
All they need to do is trot out the golden
so
calf, right?
what you got to hope for is that people who are seeking justice against Trump won't won't back down, won't be cowed by any of this. But it's, I mean, you hear some talk about people sort of adopting a, well, if we did this, it's going to hurt our country. It's going to divide us even more, which is like, oh, that's a reason to subvert the law, to subvert the Constitution, because we have to save our country from bad guys and perps who need to be shown the law.
Yeah, they don't believe that. First of all, they've been able to dismiss, uh, on the whole,
Yeah.
those kinds of arguments that really the country is on the brink of disaster in terms of losing democracy. Democracy to a lot of people is a, I don't want to call it a myth, okay,
Mhm.
but I think it's an abstraction at the least.
Too
Okay,
abstract, too abstract, right?
that's
That's why
right.
you
Yeah,
you need to see the flag as many times as you can. You need the Pledge of Allegiance. You need, what are the things in your life that says democracy? You know,
that's right.
there,
That's right.
I mean, you say, oh well,
You need to be able to burn the flag and stab police officers with the mast of your flag holding pendants.
well, I'm what I'm saying,
That is the demonstration of true
what
democracy.
I'm saying, it's such an abstract thing that people don't understand that our being able to talk about things openly and freely here, that's an act of democracy. But they don't see that ordinarily. Our
Well, they feel that they also feel that if you're critical of their perspective because they are factually inaccurate, or that they are making assumptions
Mhm.
about people's way of thinking simply based on their color or their country of origin, if they're immigrants, right? And they make all of those kind of generalizations. If you question those generalizations, if you touch on them, even very simply, they see that as a full-on assault,
Oh yeah.
and so they see you as the anti-democratic person,
Right.
while they're the ones who are expressing the truth of their experience, and it is the truth of their experience.
Yeah.
Okay, that's the problem. It is the truth of their experience. You can't deny them
Well,
that.
how
Okay,
do we get over this? What's the bridge that?
you don't get over it. You get around it. You get over it in the sense that you said hope. I do not bank on hope. I bank on working my butt off
Yeah.
to get more people out to vote, and that there's a huge majority of Americans who do understand what is at risk, and they're willing to vote accordingly. They're willing to dispose of partisan, right, entrenchment,
Yeah.
and do a lot of what my neighbors in this very upper class neighborhood that I live in, right, are willing to do, which is simply say, I'm going to be independent and nonpartisan and vote the way that I think things, the direction that I think things should go with the better
Yeah.
candidates,
I mean,
regardless of party.
so that kind of is the way that the candidates are approaching trying to find voters, because I get all these
Yes.
I get all these flyers in the mail, and
Oh man.
no one wants to identify Republican or Democrat. They're all just saying, "Here's this person, running for this," and then I look to see, where does it say Democrat? Where does it say Republican? Nowhere.
Hmm.
You can't find it anywhere. It's like
Yeah, yeah,
they
that's
don't
right.
want to say. And
Or they leave it for some small mention.
no,
It's a
there's not even that. It's almost like they want it purposely.
nothing, no partisan identity at all, huh?
Right, because they just want to say, look at what I've done. I did this for fentanyl,
Right, right.
this for for the unions, or I did this for people, and they don't want to identify as Democrat or Republican because as soon as you say Democrat, everyone thinks, oh, I know. You communicate, what they're
Yeah,
about
yeah,
instantly, right? The chimes go
yeah,
off, and you say, oh yeah, that's what that.
yeah. This is an AOC person.
Yeah,
This is an AOC
or
person.
you say
And
Republican.
if they identify as Republican, you say, okay, this is a MTG person,
Right.
right?
And
Marjorie Taylor Greene.
people automatically think that. So I guess it's a smart thing, but it's also confusing because, and I think disingenuous because if people are Republican,
It is
yeah,
disingenuous.
I don't like,
It bothers me. It bothers me when Democrats do it,
yeah,
but I understand it. I understand why either a Democrat or a Republican would do it. And in the instance of Democrats, it's because a lot of them won their seats in traditionally red districts.
right. Well, yeah,
And yeah.
yeah. All right. Hey, look, while we're at this, talking politics, Trump, I want to talk about the California Senate race because that kind of. I mean, they had the debate on Monday, and I don't know if anyone really saw it or paid attention. Barbara Lee made a comment about a $50 minimum wage, which sounds kind of,
Oh man.
but
Yeah,
I mean, you
I
got to
thought that
get
was
to that. You got to get to $50. But what'll happen is if people have to pay $50 minimum wage, people are going to get three-hour work days, and that's it. Just like if you don't get
yeah, yeah.
benefits if you get 30 hours, or if you get more than 30 hours, or if you get under 30 hours, you don't get benefits. Work employees or
Yeah,
employers.
it'll cost $10. It'll cost $10 for 5 chicken nuggets at McDonald's.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if someone is going to, the corporates are going to get their money.
It's already happening. Yeah, yeah. I think it's going to ruin business. Frankly, I mean that kind of thing would ruin business. Yeah, yeah. That bothered me. Her saying that really hurt her
You
chances.
think
I mean,
I
she already is running fourth, right? And
I think
you
yeah,
know,
I think that's a sham that she's running fourth because, Steve Garvey, the philanderer, the guy who doesn't take it, he's got a lousy family life. He's got, he's a Dodger. He's an empty Dodger suit. He gets more votes than Barbara, or more backing in the polls than Barbara Lee. That I think shows you that
yeah, I really think it's completely plausible. I disagree with you completely there.
what
I think it's completely plausible.
that he
I
gets
think
that.
there's a large population
Well,
in
I'm not
California.
doubting that he gets that many people supporting him, but I think if I was a rational person looking at the background of Steve Garvey, and especially this really damaging LA Times report that came out a
You
couple of
know,
weeks ago, I'd say, yeah, I don't want this guy to be
my brother,
senator.
my brother Emil.
Yeah.
Look who they're backing for president of the
Okay.
United
All right. Well,
States.
all right. That's it.
And then you look at Garvey, and he doesn't look that bad. I
Oh,
mean, look, the guy that's running
y-
for president of the United States, and he's going to be all likelihood the
all
nominee
right.
of one of only two major parties in American society. And you're going to tell me you can't believe that Garvey gets more
All right.
votes
You're
than
right.
Lee?
Garvey is only half empty. If Trump is all, 100% empty, Garvey's only half empty. But still, Katie Porter is the whiteboard lady. I don't get her. Schiff he's solid, but he's also, your
He's
typical.
traditional. He's a traditional
Yeah.
OG,
Yeah.
mildly liberal guy.
Yeah. Yeah. And he's also like when you just lay him, across the stage, who's out there who's going to be an advocate for people of color? To
Yeah,
the
that's
day
right.
they die, it's going to be Barbara Lee. And You're not going to get
Well, we're going to
compromise.
get to those. We're going to get to that kind of discussion when we get to the ethnic studies
Yeah. Okay. All
subject.
right. All right. So I wanted to mention that. All right. So we mentioned Trump. Uh, that's a hit on Trump.
Well, no, you mentioned
I
Trump. I
mentioned
haven't
Trump.
spoken yet.
All right,
Yeah,
but that's so the 350, 360 million he's got to come up. That's a hit today in the business fraud case. But there's also this matter of Alexander Navalny's death in Russia. Excuse me, Alexei Navalny's death. Biden
yeah,
came out and said, "Make no mistake, Putin is responsible," and I believe him. I mean, is there any question that Putin's responsible?
not at all.
I mean,
Not at all. Because it's not just a top-down thing. I mean, he's been chasing after Navalny. Much of his persecution and prosecution of Navalny
yeah,
was in direct response to something that Navalny did. So if he went out and made a speech,
mhm,
or if he went out, goes out and announces, "I'm going to run against this guy for the presidency," right?
yeah,
There was an immediate response.
yeah.
And he was either arrested and imprisoned for some brief period of time. Then he was released, and then he was poisoned. Well, he got dyed twice,
Really,
right? He got
po- po-
sprayed with the green dye a couple of times, and then Novichok, right?
yeah,
Poisoning
poisoned in
almost killed him.
yeah, poisoned in 2020. Here's the thing about Navalny, and why I bring it up with in vis-a-vis Trump, because Trump is the biggest supporter of Putin. And all these things that we're seeing in the last couple of days, the leak about uh, Russia's Star Wars capability, going into
Yeah,
space.
and that's another idiot Republican that thinks that that's going to reflect badly on Biden. And again, for the people who are supportive of Trump and
Yeah.
the Republican Party, it is going to reflect badly on Biden.
But
But that doesn't matter as much as what is actually going to happen with regard to further leaks from the Republican
yeah,
Party members on national
yeah,
security
but
committee.
Dan, I think it reflects badly on Trump because Trump is for Putin and Putin's doing this. It's a reminder that Putin is pointing his weaponry at the U.S. and he's designed it.
Okay, yeah, I agree with
You know,
you.
you
It
know,
does reflect badly on Trump in the real
yeah,
world. But the people who support Trump and most of the people who are willing to vote Republican,
yeah,
regardless of Trump,
yeah,
right? Regardless of Trump, they don't
right.
care.
They'll
They,
see
they
this.
really just care. They're domestic white Christian
So
nationalists,
wait,
right? That's what they are. They're isolationist
right.
white Christian
So are
nationalists.
you
That's who they
saying
are.
that they're just going to look at, well, this is happening under Biden's watch and it's Biden's fault that this is happening. He's got to get out. But in the meantime, if he gets out and they vote for Trump, uh, it's like Trump is backing Putin, who's doing this. That should dawn on these supporters of Trump that Trump is supporting the enemy. Trump is supporting the guy who's pointing his missiles at the U.S. I mean, it's almost like I think Republicans need a wake up call, or they're beyond wake up call. They're
No, they're beyond wake up call. The bottom line, very simply, is they want to keep their seats,
oh,
literally and
yeah.
figuratively. They want to keep their seats. That's the bottom line.
So
So they can't do anything that enangers or irritates or annoys the Trump base
yeah.
because elements of the Trump base exist all throughout the areas that among their constituents,
Well, that
all throughout.
well,
It's just a question of how much strength they have in the specific area
yeah.
that the member of Congress happens to hail from.
Well,
That's basically it.
that's just a sad state that we're in because you know
Yeah.
I just feel like if you understand this stuff about Star Wars, you understand about Trump backing Putin, and here's Putin really behind the death of Navalny. Uh, you know,
Don't forget he's holding journalists,
right? Oh yeah, he's got
you know,
journalists. Yeah,
American journalists
right.
as well as
The
others.
guy with from the Wall
Hostage.
Street Journal. Yeah, I mean, Trump is saying, hey, we're modeling our democracy after Putin's. Although Putin is not a democracy, it's a strongman dictatorship. That's what it is.
They insisted it is a democracy
Oh yeah, yeah.
because people get to vote, and a majority of people who are registered to vote get to get to express their vote.
Right. And Saddam Hussein also said his was a democracy. And hey, guess what? In the election, everyone voted for Saddam Hussein. Imagine that.
I've said this before. Historically, we've talked together for years now.
Yeah.
But if we go back a decade and a half or so, uh, what I have said in the past is the all of the Soviet satellite states were democracies. They all, in when you anglicized their names, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Their
Yeah.
anglicized name was PDR, GDR, right? What's
Uh,
that? German Democratic Republic, Polish Democratic Republic. But we all knew they were USSR.
yeah.
They're part of the Soviet sphere.
Yeah.
So what does it mean? They just label themselves democracies. Everybody gets to claim democracy if they can show that structurally they provide for a majority of people the right to vote and that those people exercise that right. That's
Right.
it.
No matter how much of a mockery of democracy it is, and
Yes, no matter how much, yeah.
it's getting to the point where the United States is kind of a mockery if you hear Donald Trump and you see what he wants to do.
Well,
And
it was a mockery when we let the majority of states practice a level of voter suppression. Okay,
um,
and all of the various methods that they use to restrict voting, and we allowed it, and the courts began to validate it.
mm,
These when the U.S. Supreme Court started validating it, and then particularly during the Obama era
mm,
with Citizens United, etc. I mean, that's
right.
crazy time.
Yeah.
That's crazy time. What the statement was in real terms. I
Right.
can't remember which justice made the statement specifically, but uh, the money and the ability to make contributions, political contributions
Mm.
for corporations, is the equivalent of free speech.
Oh yeah.
The
Right.
voter,
That's the only way that they could. Also, don't forget the corporations were, Citizens United made corporations people or individuals,
that's exactly.
and by doing that, they said, "Oh yeah, well the corporations, they have this
Yeah,
right."
yeah.
And yeah, I remember that time that political donations were free speech, and then that was considered free speech, and then you know, so you
It,
can give money to just about.
woohoo! Woohoo!
It spoiled the campaign finance.
It
Stuff.
destroyed it entirely.
Yeah.
And campaign finance was only a large issue two times in the recent history, in probably the last 35 years.
Yeah.
It's only been raised seriously two times, and it failed miserably in the Senate.
Yeah,
Uh,
and it's hard to raise it because it means that okay, either you're going to go small donations or you're going to go, and most people don't want to do small donations; they want big donations, and that means you got to get the corporates in there. And the way to get the corporates in there, you're getting all this dark money and all this, all these workarounds, and that's how we get the system we have.
I don't think the general public even understands dark money. I don't think they get it. I don't think they understand how much that
No, no,
influence is.
they just say how come they always send me emails asking for money and I always give $5 or whatever. If they do, not many do,
Oh
right?
man, what impressed the hell out of me was when I guess it's probably about 8 or 8, maybe 10 years now
Mhm.
that people were criticizing Proposition 13 because corporations were benefiting uh, to the same extent that residential property owners were benefiting. So that they said that there's got to be a differentiation here. Corporations have to be more taxable on their property ownership than residential owners, so homeowners. And so when that discussion started to get a significant amount of attention by the media, huge amount of Protect Proposition 13 material
Yeah,
started hitting the suburbs. And I
right.
could not believe the quality of the material. It was like cardstock. I mean, we're talking about better than book cover cardstock and stuff being sent out repeatedly.
Yeah,
In our other home in Solano County, God, you could put a book together with the amount of material that was being sent out to
Oh
protect Proposition 13.
yeah, and it's withstood the test
Absolutely.
of time because new older crowd, and the people who get socked by Prop 13 are all the newer buyers. If you're buying
That's
a
right.
home now,
That's right.
you get socked.
Particularly with the crazy evaluation, right?
Yeah,
Upwards
yeah,
evaluation of property these days. It's actually worse right now, even the foreign speculation.
yeah.
Remember the 76 to 81 or so, the foreign speculation
Mhm.
in money. I mean, people were getting ticked off because the Japanese were buying Rockefeller,
Yeah, still
30 Rock.
Pebble Beach. Yeah, I
Yeah,
mean, still,
yeah, yeah.
happening. The Chinese.
American iconic things. I mean, the only thing they didn't do was buy the Statue of Liberty. But people were really ticked off, man. Why are we letting all of these foreign entities,
Well,
and some of their governments make
actually,
investments?
actually, I think the Republicans, if they were consistent, they would start leading the charge about why are we giving up America to all these foreign. I mean,
Yeah,
they're going after Asian buyers in
yeah.
Florida. They're doing all these things, and it changes how conservatives view themselves because,
Well, see, well, they want to keep their seats, right? And the
yeah,
way to keep their seats is have a lot of money
yeah,
in their campaign treasuries, and then they
yeah.
want to make a lot of money. So okay, wait a minute, yeah, that's bad, but wait a minute, I can
Hey,
sell some of my property to
well,
these guys and
we
make a
don't need
bundle.
people to keep their seats that way. I mean, see, this is the thing. If people were just honest about politics, you wouldn't need term limits because people wouldn't be
Yeah,
in there
you
that
vote the
long.
bums out. The people who were
Yeah,
doing badly, you vote them out, right? But
and
but
we
when
should
they're
be able to.
partisan, when they're absolutely partisan in their position,
Yeah.
and they've rationalized everything in moral and ethical terms,
Hmm.
right, to their own advantage, right.
Yeah.
This is going to come up again when we go through the rest of the subject matter you want to
Oh
talk
yeah.
about.
Well, let's go to Fani Willis.
Okay.
What do you think about? She didn't testify today, thank goodness, because I think yesterday was enough. And a lot of people thought that she was strong enough to thwart any attempt to wrest away the case from her. They said that the prosecution did not prove that she did anything wrong, and that she was strong and feisty, and that was good. Maybe, but I think there's a lot of people out there who are kind of in the middle who might have seen Fani Willis and say, God, I can't believe she's fighting for us as our attorney general. Do you think, I mean, or as our DA, excuse me?
I liked what she did. I think
Yep.
looking pissed off and coming
Yeah.
in hot, as a lot of the media was saying, oh, see, man, she was really angry and she came in
Yeah.
hot and all that. Of course, Fox is going to paint her in the worst possible way,
Oh,
and she
sure.
fit the image. She fit that basic image of the angry black female, right? And
Yeah.
but then she softened up and started to calm
Oh,
down, and
yeah.
uh, and she still hit hard.
Yeah. Look, I liked her, but I'm just saying I'm looking at some other things that have been published by some columnists who say, oh, she's going to be, she may have won the legal battle. Oh, we lost Dan. Oh, oh, here he is again.
It was
Oh,
excellent.
there you go, Dan. We got
Okay.
you back.
Yeah,
So
sorry.
that's all right. But I think a lot of people will say she might have won the legal battle, but she might have lost the political battle because they see her image, and maybe some people don't.
Okay, I think that's fine.
Yeah,
I think that's fine. I think if she lost the political battle, but she stays on as the prosecutor,
yeah.
I think that's fine. I would really be worried. Uh, I think,
She lost if she was taken off the case.
yeah, yeah, because it wipes out the whole team,
Oh yeah,
and they would be able to take their time. I mean, a new DA, given the general red disposition, right,
right,
of that state,
right,
might just dismiss the case entirely,
right, right.
or at the very least just drag it out until after the election, right?
Yeah. Well, I think I don't know how they left it because I had to leave. I couldn't watch it all, but there's still the judge is going. He's the one who decides, right?
Yes, he is.
And I think he's prone to allow to leave her on. I think it's just
Yes,
the
I think so too.
and
Because, well, basically, I'm in agreement with what I think is a majority. I didn't look at the conservative side because they're not going to say anything good about this stuff anyway.
yeah,
But the I think that's a safe assumption anyway.
yeah,
But the several lawyers, I mean, like there were like 7 or 8 different attorneys representing various defendants, right, co-defendants with Mr. Trump,
yeah,
that all got a shot. And the judge was getting, he was saying, okay, if these guys are going to try and appeal this stuff, and certainly somebody's going to do that, right,
mhm,
uh, I'm going to let them have as much open time as possible so that they can't say that there was bias on my part and that I excluded certain things. But even he was losing patience because they kept trying to mine the same areas over and over and over again.
yeah,
And frankly, Ms. Merchant, one of the prime attorneys
yeah,
that's most active in her questioning,
mhm,
right, was asking the wrong questions.
yeah,
You can ask Linda, man, my wife. I was saying, man, is she dumb? She does not know how to ask the right question.
yeah,
That's basic in my courses for undergraduate first year students taking a politics and law class. Is you gotta ask the right
yeah,
question,
yeah.
okay?
Well, Fonnie Willis, kind of attacked her and said, "No, let me tell you what, because you lied here in this document." I thought she did well, but like I said, there are some people who are going to look at her and say she talked too much, she gave too much, very personal, about having cash in the house because her dad said this is the way you do it. I thought, man, uh, people don't like to be on the witness stand. And when they're on the witness stand, it's ask and answer. They don't want to be passionate, and I think. I don't know. The times I've been on a witness stand, I was terrible. I talk too much. I say too much. But so that's why I'm thinking, okay, maybe she'll win the legal battle. But she said a lot, and there will be tests down the road that people will go back to this, the transcripts of these proceedings, and they'll say, oh, this is what she revealed, and it's. I don't know. I hope she's all right. I'm rooting for Fani Willis. I'm rooting for Fani Willis. All right, Dan. The What about the combination of the civil case, and then they're already adding up the 90 million that Trump has to pay on the defamation and the E. Jean Carroll stuff. Okay, Dan. We gotta get him back in. So, so Dan, if you got, oh Dan, I don't know. Dan lives in a he lives in a small urban area called San Francisco, and they don't believe in internet there. They don't
No,
believe in.
there's something wrong with my service, and it's not raining or anything. I don't know what's going on.
All right, so
But
let me ask you this thing about. All right, so Fani is her case is there's like bits of the Fani case. There's bits of the civil fraud case, the 360 some million that Trump has to pay, and then there's like 90 million for the E. Jean Carroll case.
oh yeah,
This is, I mean, if people are rooting against Trump, they got to be happy. But so
yeah.
why don't we feel happy?
What? Because we're still not sure he's going to get whacked. I mean,
Yeah,
this is a good example
yeah.
that he's going to get hurt financially. I was not happy with the 3 years limitation against him, New York. I mean,
Could
I
have been more. Could have been more.
yeah, it could have been. I think it should be 10 years, which would be basically a death sentence to him. And anyway, the
That would
the
not be very beautiful, Dan. That would not be very beautiful.
no, I
Not a beautiful thing.
yeah, I
Not
want
a
to see
beautiful
how
thing.
his death would be commemorated. It would be a very interesting thing.
If they
Anyway,
wait
back
10
on the
years,
Fani Willis thing. There's 7 or 8 attorneys that had their shot at her and her father
Yeah.
and Wade, Mr. Wade's
Yeah.
business partner,
Yeah.
all of that, and they were redundant as hell. And
Yeah.
most of the time, the questions that they were asking were not only rudimentary, they were almost superfluous.
Yeah.
So they were not proving anything by evidence. There was no evidentiary
Well,
presentation
they were just
whatsoever.
they were just going after the salacious. When did
Yeah,
you sleep with them? When did you do
yeah,
this?
yeah. That's right. You know,
Who paid for
and
what?
and she kept on asking the wrong questions. She kept on saying, "When did you move to Los Angeles?" And
Oh,
he said, "I never moved to Los Angeles." Right? He went there on business, and that's
yeah.
not like moving. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
And she didn't know how to ask the right question. It was so
I,
stupid. I thought,
I, I like the questions of Fani Willis. Where did you lay your head? Did you lay your head where he laid his
I don't know
head?
why did you lay your head. Well, because she used those words. She
Yeah.
said, "Wherever I laid my head," and so they went. Well, okay.
All right. So, all right. All this stuff. Let's wait to see if it really starts. I want to see Donald Trump suffer a little bit. Like, oh my
Oh,
God, 350 million. Where am I going to get this?
I
Where am
want
I
to
going to
see
get
that.
this
I want to
money?
see him be a prisoner in Mar-a-Lago. I want to see him.
Uh, yeah.
That's what I want to see. I want to see him have his whole estate and everything all shrunk down to his hold on Mar-a-Lago, and that's it.
I just have a few bathrooms for my boxes of documents, just
Yeah,
me and my
well,
doc.
whatever happened to that new investigation that there's another secret room that they didn't know existed that's got even more stuff in it, right?
Oh,
What happened to that?
I had
Okay, don't
walked
forget
out to,
also one Mr. Comer's
yeah,
Mr. Comer's second
yeah,
second, right?
yeah,
Reliable, deeply convincing, right? Evidence,
yeah.
his second agent, right, is now being accused of lying to the FBI
Oh, yeah.
repeatedly about the Bidens. And
About my,
so, yeah,
yeah.
let's keep that going. And once again, it is a Trump appointed special counsel. So
We we can only hope that, as all these revelations are made, that they just go and we get to the conclusion that we all need as a democracy, that there are liars on the Republican
yeah,
side. There are
for Republican voters, you know, is that the best you could get? Is Comer? That's it?
yeah. Well,
This is
look, I just
Ron Johnson in Wisconsin. That those are the best people you got. I mean, geez,
well,
they keep voting for him.
this
How
is
stupid can you be? I mean, that's is that the condition of America? And as a political scientist, I have to say, yeah, yeah,
yeah,
that is
yeah.
it. That's the condition of America.
Okay, let's make a shift to I mentioned I wrote my piece on Shane Gillis
That's right.
today. He's not on this Saturday. Some people thought because they released it, the fact that Shane Gillis, the comedian, was going to host Saturday Night Live, they thought it was going to be last Saturday, but it wasn't. It's going to be on the 24th, a week from this coming Saturday. And I'm thinking that they did that to see if there was a blowback from the Asian American community. And so, what do you think, Dan? Have you noticed any? I haven't noticed anyone really up in arms or any real blowback about Shane Gillis.
Well, you can always give him a shot and let him see what he says. I
Yeah,
mean,
I mean,
and
well,
like I
that's
said, I think we talked about this a little bit last week,
yeah,
and I thought, okay, yeah, it's insulting, but I mean, this is not heavy duty. This is not the equivalent of the orange man taking the golden
yeah,
escalator and saying that they're bringing a rapist.
yeah. Well,
You know,
I said that we got bigger fish to fry. If you're an activist, you got to be concerned about the guy who says I want to be dictator for a day. You got to be concerned about the guys who would rather impeach Mayorkas instead of really looking at the immigration system and trying to fix that. I mean, all these crazy approaches, all these sidebars that they'd rather do instead of directly fixing the problem. I mean, that's what I would be upset with, and that's why Shane Gillis is kind of small potatoes. But 5 years ago, it was a big deal. 5 years ago, people were like up in arms, like saying, "How could he say that?" And also, DEI was big, and as I point out in my column, I don't think anyone really I mean, I said Asian Americans should speak out, and NBC listened, SNL listened. They got rid of Shane Gillis, but I believe in the First Amendment. I believe that if Shane Gillis wants to tell racist jokes, well, he can. That's the First Amendment. But he invites debate, and that's what NBC heard. They heard the debate. Now the debate, I know, is it going to be there? I don't think it's as strong for some reason.
I don't know. I just thought the stuff that he said was racist, but it wasn't that bad. Okay, it was
Yeah.
the kind of thing. I mean, we make worse jokes than that internally. Okay, that's
Yeah.
kind of my measure.
Well, I think also we have Asian American comedians now. We didn't we have more now than we did. We have big stars like Ali Wong and Ronnie Cheng, and we have Hassan Minaj. We got Asian American Joe Coy. We have Asian Americans across the lines. I think that hey, uh, you can't get away with racist jokes. But we're also the audience too. Asian Americans are part of the audience. You got to respect us. So, uh, you know, I think we'll see. I think I in my column I said maybe Bowen Yang and Shane Gillis will go at it in some kind of mud wrestling thing. That's
Uh,
that would be
uh,
good. That would be good. A mud wrestling.
no,
Uh,
no, no. I would
Legend of
I
the
would say okay, maybe arm wrestle or something like that.
arm
But mud
wrestling.
wrestling,
Mud
that's
wrestling.
that's
That's
so bad.
dirty.
I mean,
Dirty. Slimy.
yeah,
Dirty.
yeah.
Okay, all right. Shane Gillis, my columns on the ALDEF blog, aaldef.org/blog.
Yeah, it's time to see what he does.
Yeah, well,
I
I
mean,
look. I will say this: I have seen his two or three specials in the last 5 years. Funny guy. Funny.
yes.
He's funny. He's a funny guy. And here's the other thing. Since I've been doing I've been doing these solo shows at fringe festivals, and I'm going to do stand up this Sunday at the Improv in Hollywood, 4 p.m. on Sunday, and I know how tough it is to get a laugh. I know how tough. Like that's why I like talk radio. I don't have to get a laugh here. I might get a laugh out of Dan, maybe, but that's not the goal. To get
Well, I got a preview of what you're going to do in L.A. and I lauged. I
yeah,
laughed.
you
And
laugh. You
I
laugh.
laughed at all two of your better jokes.
No, it's hard to do these things, and like 5 minutes it feels like a long time, but when you look at it and you're saying, what, 5 minutes? What's that? 15, 20 jokes? It goes like that. You say, hey, wait a minute, I do a 60-minute
You can
show.
do 15 jokes in 5 minutes. You're not hoping for any applause at all. I mean, what the fuck?
Well, no, I mean 15. Yeah, I can. No, I do have. I have an applause break. I talk about my
Yeah,
beef.
yeah. Nah, I'm gonna
I
have to now. I'm gonna have to check on some of my friends that are doing
Yeah.
local
Well,
comedy.
the thing is, look, I I do 15. I do 15 in about 5 minutes, but they're like little titters. It depends. I can scale back. I can scale back because I'm not. I've got material, but I don't have to fill it up. So it's relationship to the audience. So if
Right
I
on,
if I have a
right
good
on.
audience, I'll have like,
Are you gonna touch your crotch every once in a while?
of
Okay,
course,
well,
because that's the joke. That's the signal to laugh.
yeah,
That's the
yeah,
signal to laugh.
yeah.
So
Yeah,
I
no,
was
it means that you have to support your scrotum
yeah.
because you might pull a hernia if you laugh too hard at your own stuff.
Oh yeah, yeah.
That
Well,
that that's
I
it.
gotta be careful with that.
So
Hey,
yeah, I'm reaching right now. I mean,
have you checked out the Asian Week database?
no,
If you go to Asian Week database or Google that, Asian Week, which was the largest Asian American weekly,
it's excellent. It was excellent. It was really
excellent.
terrible that they
You can
stopped.
you can go and you can plug in my name, and you get all my columns from like 1994. So I wrote a column on the kings of comedy, the Asian kings of comedy back in 1994, and I said each king It's a natural for a nightclub comic, which leads to the embrace of the penis joke. There was no shortage of them. Each king had a penchant for telling jokes about their non-king size Asian penis, but should it be such a cultural landmark when all the body parts mentioned in a comic's act are Asian? While it can be shocking to hear an Asian talk about his penis in public, really, what is there to say about the subject when you know there's 1.3 billion people in China? That Asians have the hardest working penises in the world? I, I wrote that in 1995 or six. And so I was just looking to see, well, I wonder if, my Asian Kings of Comedy column was could be retrieved. And it can. It can. I was writing about um, Kevin Shea and some other people. And actually, I went to see that show. I went to see the show in Hawaii, and I was with Dr. Theo Gonzalez because the show was in Hawaii, and I was in Hawaii at the time. Anyway, I just wanted to point that out. All right, so 1.3, and 1.4 billion Chinese now, 1.4, a little less than 1.4 billion Indians. So that's like 3 billion Asian penises working hard, working hard. All right. So I do have a penis joke. I say that because I do have a penis joke in my set. But
Yeah,
it's just,
but is it about Asians or is it about any penis?
no, it's not. Oh, at anypenis.com? No.
Yeah.
No, it is it's a penis joke.
No,
No,
Marjorie Taylor Greene already has that. She already owns that.
she owns it. She's got
Yeah,
anypenis.com.
that.com. Yeah, yeah.
Okay. All right. All right. One last.
I think her subtitle is "Mine's Bigger Than Yours."
I see. I see.
Yeah, yeah.
Hey, all right. So I wanted to bring this up with you because you're an ethnic studies guy. You were there at the beginning, right?
I was.
The front page of the New York Times has this story called "Ethnic Studies Collides with Israel Hamas War," and I just wanted your opinion. The headline was the state's high school, or the subhead, the state's high school students will be required to take the subject, but some object to how the discipline addresses the Israeli Palestinian conflict. And it said the lead is California has grand ambitions for ethnic studies. By 2025, the state's public high schools, about 1,600 of them, must teach the subject. By 2030, students won't be able to graduate high school without it. And that's like a few, like 6 years from now. For policymakers, the goal is to give California students, 80% of whom are non-white, the opportunity to study a diverse array of cultures. Research has shown that ethnic studies classes can raise grades and attendance for teenagers at risk of dropping out. I agree with that. But then it says, but even in a liberal state like California, scholars, parents, and educators have found themselves at odds over how to adopt, or rather adapt, the college level academic discipline for high school students, especially because of its strong views on race and the Israeli Palestinian conflict. When the name ethnic studies might bring to mind a broad exploration of how ethnicity and race shape the human experience, the discipline, as taught in universities, is narrower and more ideological. And so it says ethnic studies focuses on four groups: Black Americans, Latinos, Native Americans, and Asian Americans. It aims to critique various forms of oppression and spur students to take action, often drawing analogies across disparate expanses of time and geography. The Palestinian experience of displacement is central to that exercise and has been compared by some scholars to the Native American experience. So, I mean, it's a lengthy article, but it's critical because how do you get the approach right so you please everyone, or so that everyone is served in this?
Okay. First of all, you can't please everyone,
Yeah.
and we knew that from the start. Let me say. generally, this is a well written article. It is fairly thorough. The
Mhm.
people that were consulted are knowledgeable about the not only what is ethnic studies, they've taught it for years, but also the issues surrounding uh, criticisms of ethnic studies, especially those that are couched in terms of critical race theory or CRT. And they're also familiar with the more recent history of having ethnic studies taught at different school districts. That's how the movement towards the state
Mhm.
requirement got started. Is at local school districts. One of which is uh, the one that I live in, which is the Unified San Francisco Unified School District, SFUSD.
Yeah.
And what I didn't like is when they mention the origins of ethnic studies. Again, they mention in general colleges, Bay Area colleges, right? And then they mention in the next paragraph UC Berkeley. The
Ah.
reality is that it was SF State that started it. Okay,
Mhm.
I was there. Uh, I have on tape, and I'm going to release it to the general public at the 40th anniversary celebration of UC Berkeley's establishment of ethnic studies. There is a discussion by two members of the student group that established the TWLF at Berkeley, who say, among other things, that they got the idea for the TWLF from us at SF State, and that there was a lot of cooperative discussion going on between the two campuses. Okay,
TWLF is Third World
Third
Liberation.
World Liberation Front, and I was an alternate member of the Third World Liberation Front. I sat in, especially on the meetings that had to do with how we would start ethnic studies. How would we get it off the ground? How would we get to post courses and shape them into curricula? Whether or not we would establish ourselves as a co relative institution, the equal of other schools within the college at the time, because it was just a college. It was
Yeah.
SF State College, not SF State University at the time. So all of those discussions, at least at the level of TWLF meetings, I was present at.
Yeah.
Okay, and
And
so
so
it
SF
really
State was
bothers
first.
me that,
Yeah.
well, they again, they do a great job for the most part, but they don't mention SF State, and that has been something characteristic of the media for the last 50 years, 55 plus
Is it,
years.
Dan, is it just the presumption that, oh, well, SF State College versus UC Berkeley, and they have it, and they claim to be, you know,
Berkeley's program isn't even a school or a
yeah,
college;
yeah,
it's a department. And it's not a unified institution. Black studies exist separately. Africana studies exist separately at Berkeley from the other ethnic groups. Okay, and that has been true since 1976, despite several efforts, maybe all the way into the 90s, several efforts to try and reunify those groups. Black
yeah.
studies got a better offer,
Well,
before the conversion to Africana studies.
here's a question: why was it that San Francisco State was able to put it under that College of Ethnic Studies umbrella and present this, unified sense of ethnic studies versus the sort of hodgepodge piecemeal situation that you're describing at Berkeley?
Well, it's not only Berkeley; it's hodgepodge piecemeal on most other campuses. We are, we were the only school, the only unified school with four separate departments. So, where they're wrong, where this writer was wrong about ethnic studies, was the original four departments were in fact as he described them, right? But uh, now Asian American studies is so expanded because there's so many different Asian ethnic groups in American society.
Yeah.
When we
Well,
started, there were
yeah,
four major populations, right?
yeah,
And the three local major populations were Japanese, the largest at the time, Chinese, and Filipino. So
right.
that's how Asian American studies got started. Okay. Now,
Yeah,
La Raza was predominantly Mexican American, versus Central American, right? And so there was a conflict going on there, but they unified around the concept La Raza and now Latinx studies. So how were we able to maintain it? We were committed to functioning as an institutional whole. We were
College,
committed to the concept of third world. Okay,
right?
that we had that as the linking philosophy, and so then you have to look at all of the writers that we were studying at the time, so there was a strong third world consciousness, right, that was
I
presented by a small group of writers who were liberation oriented writers coming from the specific experience of anti-colonial liberation.
All right, but if the high schools had taken the same approach that San Francisco State did, could you avoid this? As a headline states, the ethnic studies collision with the Israel Hamas war. Could you have avoided that if
No,
they took that more holistic view?
no, I'll tell you why. Because of the pro-Israeli aggression
Mhm.
from the Jewish American, from elements of the Jewish American community. I don't want to overgeneralize about the Jewish American community, but the
Mhm.
reality is, over the entire existence of ethnic studies, whether you look at the history of the school and now College of Ethnic Studies at SF State or any other major campus, there has always been a pro-Israeli element. Um, and sometimes it's well invested. In other words, they have substantial funding from private sources of, for example, a Jewish studies chair.
Mhm.
Okay. And so there has always been that very strong influence at SF State and at other campuses, at UC Berkeley as well. So when the notion of having an ethnic studies requirement statewide at any level of education, there's an ethnic studies requirement at the college level at many institutions since the 1970s, early 1970s.
Right.
Shortly after the establishment of ethnic studies at SF State and UC Berkeley, and actually UC Davis started their program a week or two earlier than UC Berkeley,
Yeah.
and then UCLA followed suit. So the UCs, were kind of supernumerary, because they went, and we there now, there has always been, well, in the recent 15 to 20 years, even before this imaginary CRT problem that has been raised by the right, by the Republican Party for the most part, there were already attacks on different elements of ethnic studies. So, for example, the larger population of color in Arizona is of Mexican descent. And Tucson, Arizona, it feels like at least 15 years ago now, f- outlawed the teaching of Mexican American studies. They outlawed ethnic studies, at least the Mexican American element of ethnic studies, in their Tucson schools, and that went all the way up to, it was up. It was a district federal court case. They won, and then it was appealed to the Ninth Circuit here in San Francisco. I and Roger Alvarado, also a veteran of the SF State Strike, and a co-founder of Ethnic Studies, we spoke at that event, and people came from all over Arizona to attend and to see whether or not they could acquire public support for their position in favor of the restoration of Mexican American studies, or elements of ethnic studies that included Mexican American studies at Tucson, and we were very disappointed. The Ninth Circuit, which is known and criticized by the right
Right. For
as an
being
extreme
liberal.
left circuit, right,
Yeah.
sided with Tucson, and
Yeah.
so there was a limitation, a restriction put, and the rationale was that teaching ethnic studies and especially Mexican American studies caused racial animus. And
So, yeah.
yeah,
Well, let me
but
let me ask you this, because this article comes up as California is trying to implement this, and it says that, okay, we got ethnic studies. It's supposed to be a positive thing, but it's difficult to do. Is that going to reverse the trend and make people not want to put in ethnic studies because
California is California, and we have one of the largest
yeah,
populations of people of color in the
right,
country, right? And some of our colleges, and particularly once again, SF State has been cited
mhm,
as the most diverse population, student body wise,
yeah,
in the country, and that's happened twice in recent history. Now, that yeah, statewide, particularly in the urban areas, right, the strong urban areas in Southern and Northern California, we've got too much influence on political process to experience the kind of exclusion and termination of projects that has been experienced in other states, particularly in red states,
yeah,
like Florida and
yeah.
Texas,
But
right?
this example could kill it in other states.
Yes, absolutely. It shows the same response, and that's the really hurtful part,
Mhm,
is that pro-Israeli, anti-Palestinian element, right? Uh,
yeah,
they're citing the fact that there are pro-Palestinian people teaching within ethnic studies projects and programs, right? And these people, frankly, have bent over backwards to make sure that they show the differences of perspective on what's going on in the Middle East.
right,
The problem is that in some instances, they're generalizing about, for example, making statements. It's accurately covered
yeah,
as a bias within this article. They make statements that describe the establishment of Israel as an essentially European invasion, right? And it tends to exclude the discussion about the history of Jewish people who have lived consistently and constantly, right, in Palestine for thousands of years. So
right.
there is that element, right, that
So,
has lived there,
so
and it's a native element.
yeah,
Okay.
but what they've done is the curricula is established by these professors who then hand it down to the high school folks, right?
Well, through the statewide superintendent's office, right?
Right, but I mean, the idea is that is it a watered down version of what might be presented in college, or because the headline is that there's this clash over critiques of oppression, and how do you
Right.
get over that unless you have a very well-rounded, very comprehensive? Here's how it happened to everyone, which you know,
Okay. And I think that's a fair question. I think focusing on only the Israeli-Palestinian conflict as being a core element would be problematic. It's not alone. I think a lot of the resistance to ethnic studies in general, again, is uh, is similar to the resistance that we saw when people were using CRT as something that they didn't want being taught. You will recall
critical
that,
race theory, yeah,
yeah, two
yeah,
years ago on your program,
yeah.
I stated that when people criticize CRT, they're really criticizing ethnic studies.
Yeah, and
Okay.
also yeah, and so you got to define it. People don't know what it is, and so what they're, they have a an assumption that it's far worse, far greater than they think, and then when they realize
Well,
it's
and that comes, and you're leading to exactly the issue. They don't like the reference to racism. They do not. They deny. I mean, and you've seen the politicians on the right say it, and some moderates even. I'm sure moderate Democrats, if they're asked and if they're forced on the issue, they deny that there is any such thing as systemic racism
yeah,
in American society. And yet, I point as a regular element of my courses. I point at the U.S. Constitution and I show where there is actual mention of race and where there is clearly a differentiation between free people and not free people, Okay, when Indians not taxed, etc. So there is clear mention of race in the Constitution itself, and it is institutional. It is systemic. Yet they deny that. The
So
13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments were intended to deal with with those issues. And so, once again, either by inference or direct mention, race is a part of the Constitution through the amendments.
right, but now this comes up with this New York Times article about California because of the Israel Hamas war.
Yes,
It's a news thing.
yes.
If there were no Israel Hamas conflict, it wouldn't be as big an issue, but at some point it would come up if things flared up. It has since October, and now it's come up. How do we get out of this collision course, or how do we avoid the clash or bring it back so that we can have ethnic studies in California without any sense of derision from
I think if if the Israeli-Palestinian issue is really the issue upon which all fairness would turn, okay, I think there's a way that we can arrive at a position that clearly states what are inbounds and therefore protected perspectives on the issue, and those things that should be excluded because they are too provocative, or just not fair, that they're not fair representations. And
so
that,
you just leave it out.
yeah, yeah. Or if not leave it out, what the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, leave the whole thing out?
Not the whole thing, but it's really, instead of really getting into it where you get
With a great deal of depth where it becomes provocative one way or the other.
yeah,
I think a certain level of provocation is tolerable. We have to find that point of tolerance where we can say, okay, here's where the differences lie. Here's where the conflict lies. This is as much conflict as we will allow. Okay, because there's other issues. I just said that most Americans don't want to admit that American society was established on race.
right. Well, there's still basically black white issues and native issues. I mean,
Well, see,
those issues.
in recent decades, right, they've been able to accept more white people have been able to accept that black people are part of America, right? And they've even tolerated black white interracial marriage to a certain extent,
Wow.
okay?
Yeah.
But they still look askance at other interracial marriages.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, see, all right. I is ethnic studies in high school in trouble as this?
I think it depends on the jurisdiction.
Yeah,
I think you're going to have red counties,
yeah,
as just as you have blue counties, and
yeah.
then once again there's going to be the urban suburban urban rural divide, right? And so there's going to be conflict at that level. And but see, the conflict there is going to be whether or not to even have ethnic studies.
Yeah. Well, I mean, this has to be implemented by 2030, right? So we got about 6 years to get it right. So
Yeah, can you believe that? Well, see, it's I recall that the faculty who were pushing for recognition of ethnic studies as a graduation requirement for high school in the San Francisco Unified School District. God, that's got to be 10 years ago, maybe
oh yeah,
longer than 10 years ago that we were arguing about that. And I remember appearing and making statements in front of the Board of Education in favor of that process, the establishment of a course with and that would get also pre-credit for college,
yeah,
okay, towards college graduation. So that started at least 10 years ago,
right.
and so to say that this has got to be in place by 2030 means that it will be a full generational experience in trying to get this established, and that the reason for that slow development level of development is exactly the kind of discussion that we just had. It's not just about Israel Palestine, okay?
It's
It's all
everything.
about
Everything.
yeah, it's about
Yeah.
race. It's about race and class. It's about LGBTQQ. It's about justice, and
Yeah.
whether or not people feel threatened when you say this is traditional America and this is people's experience. They feel threatened by that.
Yeah, that's why, the best thing to do is just forget the social sciences, go with STEM. Everyone's a number. If we all just know numbers, we don't know history. We don't have to know any of that. Just numbers
That's
and
right. That's
numbers.
right. They're only going to be able to distinguish us by our fingerprints.
Right.
They're not going to be. Yeah,
And and
yeah.
also, yeah, forget about story,
We're going
forget
to
about
find out
history.
though that there are certain whorls and whirls, right, in our fingerprints that identify race. So
Yeah.
there's a
Well,
racial pattern, man.
forget about story. It's just all about numbers. Highest number wins. That's what people want in schools now. Highest number
Yeah,
wins.
that'll put shock comedians, that use race as a lever.
Yeah.
That'll put them out of business, though, man. It won't
Yeah.
be funny anymore.
Yeah, well, race. We want to they want to deracinate everything, right? And so we
Right.
talk about race, and we want to be colorblind.
That's
So,
right. Yeah, that's it right there.
yeah,
I'm laughing because I have neighbors that say, I'm colorblind.
yeah, colorblind.
I
Yeah.
don't see race.
So, all right. So we've taken care of ethnic studies. When are you going to reveal the thing to UC Berkeley to let them know that they weren't first? When are you going to do that?
We we've had an ongoing battle about this for ever since we started. It's just that
Oh,
people like the UC system. It's pedestalized, right? The whole
yeah,
UC system is
on the
pedestalized.
pedestal. Yeah,
Yeah, and it's seen as and it's true. It's probably the best public system in the world.
yeah.
You
Well, no,
know,
that's true. That's true.
and they always enjoyed the position, the status
Mhm.
of being a top tier institution, right?
Yeah,
Several of the campuses are dedicated to high level research,
yeah,
and they're connected to, UCSF is an example, right?
yeah. Oh,
They're
yeah, yeah.
connected to, biological research,
Medical.
medical research, yeah, and services, and we, through my retirement program, health services, and all the rest of that stuff, I have open access to all of that.
Yeah,
I can go to the UC system if one of my doctors is my cardiologist is a UC system. My
yeah,
dentist is a professor at
yeah.
UC.
I know.
So, you know,
That's a good thing about UC. All right, look, Dan. I was going to ask you about the Super Bowl, but now the Super Bowl has been kind of
yeah,
overshadowed by the shooting,
really sad.
and that's it because there's kids. They're
It's
kids.
kids, and the kids that were injured. It's a very popular spinner. You
Yeah,
know,
yeah. DJ. Yeah, the Tejano DJ of
yeah, and yeah, and
Alva.
she got kids of her own, and that was awful. And again, it's youth. It looked like a youth of color
Yeah,
that was the suspect that I saw that was brought down, and he was a pretty hefty guy too. The people who brought him
yeah,
down, had to be pretty
yeah.
strong.
I just it saddened me, and like I said, I've forgotten about the game. I mean, the game was good. It was exciting. The 49ers should have won it. They didn't. They're up against Mahomes. Okay, great. Great game. They celebrated, and then all it takes is that reality. And you
Yeah,
see,
it is really terrible. I felt so badly, not only for the families of the victims, but I felt really badly for Kansas City. I mean
oh, yeah. Yeah.
that that is something that it's going to be on everybody's mind, no matter how well the Chiefs do in the future. That's not just going to affect football. It's going to affect any large, parade or gathering.
Anywhere.
People are going
Anywhere.
to feel at risk. Yes,
Yeah, not just like I was thinking, when the 49ers had their big parades and when the
the
Giants,
Warriors and the Giants.
yeah, when the Giants had their big parades, uh man, well, I never went to the Warriors ones because they were always in Oakland and I didn't want to go there because it's a little far for me. But I went to all the Giants parades. I covered the Giants parades in
Right.
2010, 12, 14. My God, that was like it was community. And look at how how far back that is. It's only
Yeah,
like 10 years.
yeah.
And now I don't know if I would feel safe at a thing like that again.
I We definitely wrote it off. I
Yeah.
mean, but see, part of the reason Linda and I wrote those events off
Yeah.
is just because we're older,
Yeah.
and the ability to seek safety, right? We've slowed down. We just don't have the physical strength and ability that we used to have, and
Yeah.
we're recognizing our vulnerability. I mean,
Yeah. Well,
that's just
and
the
that's
way
all
it is.
right. That's the reality. I mean, I I I think we're going to have celebrations where teams are going to pass out Zoom links and people on Zoom saying, "Yeah, now here's Patrick Mahomes, my buddy here."
Yeah, that's right.
And that's good. I mean, we've been prepping for this.
Yeah,
Zoom is not gone. It's gonna, this is how we're gonna meet. This is how we're gonna mass gather for
right.
thousands of people in a Zoom room, and it'll be a beautiful thing. It'll be
Yeah,
a beautiful thing. A beautiful, beautiful thing.
right,
Beautiful,
right.
beautiful, beautiful thing. Yeah. So, Dan,
I think younger people.
yeah, they'll do it.
The thing that upsets me is
Yeah,
that guns are a constant issue, right? It's because people are killed by guns on a daily basis,
yeah,
but we only pay attention when there's a mass shooting, right? And they occur regularly. But
yeah,
if there's a long enough span between a media covered mass shooting, between mass shootings, uh, people forget. And I ask every semester that when I teach, one of the first things that I ask is, what are your top issues? What do you think needs to be immediately addressed that can be addressed? Social issue, political issue, economic issue. What are they?
yeah.
This last time that I taught a class, nobody mentioned gun violence.
Oh, well, people forget. They have short memories, right?
Well, yeah, and so that bothers me. I
Oh,
mean,
yeah,
that
it should.
we can't contain these things as constant issues that, along with economy and inflation and immigration and climate change. I mean,
Comes
these
and
are
goes.
constants. They're there every single freaking day,
Yeah,
and we can't keep those in mind.
this is why we have to celebrate, not celebrate. We have to honor and commemorate anniversary dates because it'll be that we'll look at the calendar and every day has a significant shooting, like the Parkland shooting. They had,
Yep,
they had,
Sandy
and
Hook.
you can't forget Uvalde. You can't forget, the
I said Sandy Hook.
Orlando.
Yeah,
Orlando. You
yeah,
can't.
and then before all of that was Colorado, right?
Oh yeah, can't forget
Twice.
Columbine. I mean, I just
And
eh,
before that, there were the two San Francisco
yeah.
mass
Oh
shootings,
yeah,
right?
San Francisco. And then
And
how about this?
Stockton in what was
Stockton,
that, 89?
Patrick Purdy in '89. Look, every day we should do a shooting calendar that we commemorate.
Wow, that's not a bad idea.
That would be because every day we can not celebrate, wrong word,
Commemorate.
commemorate the shooting that that has it's gotten out of control. And you can tell, well, this happened in 2010, now we're 2024. This happened in 2020, now we're 2024. My first shooting as a reporter I covered in 1980 88. Covered in 19 no excuse me I covered in 1980 in Dallas, Texas. Actually, I was in Dallas and the shooting was in East Texas. This guy who went in and said he went in camo gear into a church and said, "This is war." Um, and it was, I had never seen a mass shooting ever before. But let's see, I'm gonna pull it up here. It was June 22nd, 1980. That was my first mass murder, and it was only 2, 4, 5 victims, and then 3 injured. Happened in a little town called Dangerfield. And the killer killed himself. So
Wow. And what was that? You said it was 1980?
it was June 22nd, 1980.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I never forgot that. I mean, it was like this was before I got to San Francisco, and it was sad. I mean, I realized what I was covering, and you just had to like separate and compartmentalize, and then just concentrate on the facts. But it was just sad. Anyway, on
On
that,
that note, wow.
hey, so Dan, thanks. I'm gonna go off to LA and do my set. Thanks for laughing at my jokes earlier.
Yeah, I think I'm a pretty good, test
Yeah, yeah,
audience.
and
Yeah.
and also, you're right. Uh, I'm going in with fewer jokes, but finishing with a flurry.
Yeah, that's
And
part of the thing is picking the right one to exit.
yeah,
And
yeah,
I've seen people make it on the night shows, right? The late shows,
mm.
and they had terrible exits. I mean, they were
Sometimes
flat
sometimes
exits.
they run out.
Yeah,
Look, I
you
mean,
can't do that. You got to you got to finish with a biggie.
yeah. What happens? I'm pretty sure this is what happened. People went in with like 15 jokes, and then people laughed, and suddenly you have no time to tell 15. You can only tell 12, and then you got to immediately go to the last joke. But then, something happens, and you can't segue, and boom, you end up with a
Yeah,
joke.
yeah. You end up
It's
going
not,
out short and flat. Nah, man. You
yeah,
always got to have that one. I think I would go in with that mindset. Is that
yeah,
my finishing joke is going to be this joke because
yeah.
it's a killer. It's a
Yeah,
killer. They're going to die laughing.
the
It-
killer.
yeah.
Yeah, because we want to kill. Because All right, so I don't tell this joke, but this is one of the ones I'm leaving on the table, where I say Jon Stewart is back on the Daily Show, and
There
I
he
get
is
it.
on
I
Mondays
get,
only.
I get it. Comedians want to be news guys because news guys want to be comedians because we've realized you can't with a straight face say grab him by the pussy. You can't with a straight face say grab him.
You can't.
You can't. No, that's
I think he did it. The only
he
guy
did
that
it.
laughed was Bush.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know, but yeah.
I dropped that from my set.
Okay, that's a good idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, well, what if you changed it to just vagina?
No, not the vagina.
Grab him by the China.
Grab me by
That's why he says China that way.
China.
China,
Yeah, that's
China.
true. China.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
know.
yeah.
All right. Hey, Dan.
That means that he's going to refer to certain women as Chinese, huh?
Dan,
Yes,
Professor Dan.
yes.
Thank you very much for joining. Have a good week. I'll call you on the other side there.
Thanks for having me. Yeah,
Uh,
and I can't wait until the rain slows down a little bit so we can go out and enjoy one of our common meals again.
Oh yes,
I
yes.
kind of miss. I
We're
don't miss you much, but I miss Kath. So
yeah, we're gonna do that. There he goes, Daniel Phil Gonzalez, my friend, College of Ethnic Studies, San Francisco State University. Always good to talk to him about all the news, and especially when ethnic studies in the news, because he knows ethnic studies. All right, so that's it for me and our show. We're here Monday through Friday. We do this thing live, 2 p.m. Pacific, sometimes recorded, but on Facebook, fb.com/EmilGuillermo.media, Twitter @EmilAmok or X @EmilAmok, on YouTube @EmilAmok1, youtube.com @EmilAmok1, my YouTube channel, and we just talk. It's a news talk. If you want to see punchlines, I do a punchline-y kind of show. 5 minutes. I got a set. I'm going to be Sunday at the Improv in Hollywood on Melrose. Hey, 4 p.m. 4 p.m. Easy at 4 p.m. No rain. I'm told it's not going to rain. So show up there. and some other things coming up in March and April. Hey, thank you for being here. Um, and yeah, thanks to Dan again. Long weekend. We honor the presidents, especially the ex-president who owes $360 million now. Because we want to see him pay. We want to see him pay. He needs to pay. He needs to set a good example. Thank you. You know, we end with a little meditation. We like our meditations. A little loving kindness. Because, you know, send it out to you and comes back. And so, as I wish for me, I wish for you. May you be safe. May you be happy. May you be healthy. And may you live with ease. Emil Guillermo here. Till next time, mahal